I'm Paul Holdeman. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee for the Anchorage Assembly. This is the regular scheduled meeting for the month of March, Wednesday, March 19th. We are now, I'll use consistently the clock as we go through ACS anyway, at 12:03 p.m. Time set was noon. We're running just a few moments behind waiting for Ms. Gray Jackson, one of the committee members, and had a little technical difficulty with our recorder. But we're all here. And by that, I'd like my colleagues to introduce themselves as well for the record.
Amy Hall, Anchorage Assembly.
Duke Training Assembly.
Elsie Grace Hamilton.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. So we have, and I will apologize for what looks to be the thin items on the agenda, that just all for the public safety departments of the municipality, fire, police, emergency management, health and human services. We don't have anything specific under each of the bullet items. There were a couple of matters of old business that we might have asked questions on, members of the committee, as well as if we could get some updates on how things are doing as far as staffing, equipment, and budget. Any items that the assembly might be able to help your departments with. We do have some persons to be heard from the community, referenced at least 2 items that I know of, and I should be able to be done before the generally 1 hour that we normally would set. Sometimes we go a little longer. As you know, this is a fairly active committee with a lot of different issues. So with that, Chief Bashut for fire.
Let's see, for fire, you mentioned budget and personnel. We did submit our first quarter budget revisions to the mayor's office. That's currently winding its way through the city, looking to increase our overtime budget to cover expenses, looking to staff the fire marshal seat, and as well as an additional ambulance part-time in the downtown area. So those are the big ticket items that we're looking at in the first quarter budget revision. Other than that, as far as personnel and equipment goes, we have a bond proposal going before the voters for a new truck company and a couple of other ambulances and a couple of tenders. I hope that they'll come to pass. Those are the big items that are facing us right now.
Quick question on the bond proposal for the truck and other items. Are these replacement items or are they new items coming in?
It's just hard equipment, so it's just replacement. Yeah, the truck company will be stationed downtown. It's going to replace it. If we get it, we'll replace a 20-year-old truck. And it's the same with the tenders and the ambulances. The ambulances don't really go to a specific station per se. We just find the one with the highest miles and the ones that are falling apart the most we replace them.
Will these bonds for these vehicles or equipment, will they have O&M for maintenance on the vehicles or crew to staff the equipment?
No, because it's just the physical apparatus. We've already got the crew to make the O&M built into our budget.
Great, Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologize to you and folks, but I haven't eaten all day. I don't want to faint. Okay, so your first quarter budget revision request is to increase your overtime budget, which is a wonderful thing. We all know that. Hopefully they'll do the right thing so we don't go through what we went through 2 months ago. And then and then the matrix, I heard you say fire marshal. Just the fire marshal?
Actually, the fire marshal is the big one.
Right.
And then we also are, for the recommendations of the matrix report, we want to take one of our existing inspectors and upgrade that to a senior inspector. And then there's 2 public education positions in there also.
Okay, so the request is for fire marshal and 2 public education positions.
And upgrade one of our inspectors.
Okay,
to a
so the
senior
upgrade
inspector.
is upgrading a position that already exists.
Correct.
So that's different.
Correct.
And then you mentioned ambulance.
Yes.
What is that?
In a nutshell, which we didn't really need the matrix report to tell us, we already knew. We've got too many, our ambulances are too busy. The bulk of them are too busy. They're running on too many calls. They said it very subtly in the matrix report. They said there are times when the EMS system is beyond capacity. So they recommended an additional ambulance,
An actual
a new
ambulance.
service.
So this is a capital budget request for an ambulance.
I'm not, I gotta be careful with my terms. I'm not, we can put another ambulance on the street. It's the personnel and the
Okay,
overtime to
so
staff
it's
that ambulance.
personnel, staff,
Yes.
and the ambulance that
Yes.
you've already have.
Yes.
Okay, Thank you
So-
for the clarity.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Mr. Train? Mr. Hall?
No, I'm fine. I got it.
Okay. Quick follow-up, Chief, ASP, CSP. Anecdotally, and I'm asking for some data, of course, Captain Fanning, if you might want to note this as well, but are there delays being experienced by either fire department or police personnel because of demand on call-outs, if you will, for the ASP vans? I know that recognizing we've funded at the assembly level an increased van at particularly certain times. I'm hearing sometimes upwards to an hour or more waits. And sometimes ambulances even holding and waiting until ASP can get to them.
Always hate to shoot from the hip. I would say anecdotally things are much better than they've been in the past. We took over the dispatching of the ASP CSP that for whatever reason has really smoothed things out. They've got the other van on the street. That's twice the capacity we had before. And I always hesitate to say this because somebody would prove me wrong, but I don't think in the last 12 months any AFD apparatus has been waiting, more than 15, 20 minutes for CSP. They just haven't been. Now, prior to that, 12 months ago, yeah, maybe that would happen on a rare event, but it's been much improved. Much improved.
And just a quick follow-up, and I will say that, full disclosure, working now for the university in the law enforcement capacity. Does that rule apply in priority? My understanding, and maybe you can help me here, that ASP will go first to like a person in the roadway or on a sidewalk that might be blocking or in danger, and secondly to a police and fire call-out request for their help, and then thirdly to just a general citizenry call, and then perhaps in the lower priority, meaning that they're driving around, they just happen to see somebody and stop picking them up.
Yes.
That
All except for the first one is a higher priority. If somebody's drunk and run away or in hazard, we'll send the closest resource to that. But if they're in a safe spot, yeah.
Well, does ASP in that same priority respond to, say, the military police out in Elmendorf or Fort Rich, and then secondly to either the airport police or to the
I don't
university
think so.
police?
No. Okay, no, they don't go out.
No, for the most part,
No.
they're downtown, that's the
Yeah.
majority of their business, and then I think sometimes they've gone as far south as Tudor.
Yeah, I
But
think that's pretty
really,
much the southern boundary.
Like 90% of the business is pretty much downtown.
Correct.
I'm sorry, yes, Ms. Sweetmeyer, I apologize, your HHS oversees the contract, so.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because there seems to be an increasing number around the UMed Hospital Area District, University, Providence, A&MC. There's a lot of people wandering near even the police headquarters. And so sometimes it's a
Have you
little bit.
witnessed this directly, you're saying, or you've
Yes.
gotten complaints from people?
Both, witnessing it
Okay.
and complaints. And typically, it's, and I don't know whether there's a breakdown of, well, if it's not Anchorage Police or Anchorage Fire calling, is it the higher priority? Or if, say, the A&MC security called and said, hey, we've got a person down. Now, mind you, they're gonna check for medical issues, but beyond that, I mean, and I understand the hospital runs actually have their own, there's oftentimes the vans are bringing people for medical clearances or picking them up and taking them to the ASP center for client care. It's just something you might want to just double check. And I'm curious as to whether or not it's just, does the priority the same, for instance, if another non-municipal police agency called and say, for instance, police and fire out at airport, university, the military J-Bear, if they had somebody at Boniface Gate, for instance, would they, if they called, would you be the same priority, or would it be classified as just any other motorist that could be waiting for 20, 30, 40, 50?
I don't know. I can check for you.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, and of course, we're always interested in hearing if the additional van and staffing, if that's working as it was intended. And
Yeah,
help.
very much so. I don't have hard and fast numbers I can put in front of you, but I do know that it's been.
Is it possible to get some data?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that'd be an appropriate follow-up. Mrs. Gray Jackson, you agree? I know we'd be interested.
I'll take the lead on that.
Okay, thank you. Moving then into the police department, Deputy Chief Captain Fanning, if I might extend this to ask for a personal privilege point here. You might recall Deputy Chief Fanning had appeared on behalf of the chief as Captain Fanning then.
I did.
Some months back, and recently was appointed by the mayor as the deputy chief. And we should have that before our committee, actually, for confirmation and before the assembly soon. So, Deputy Chief Fanning, would you be interested in just kind of describing some of your experiences? And I don't have to give you a full resume.
Yeah, actually, I used to work for you, not that long ago.
No, I worked for
Chief,
you.
we're not gonna hold that against you.
I worked for you. Never make that clear.
Yeah, I have a little history. I've been with APD for a little over 22 years. I had almost 10 years as an infantry officer in the United States Army prior to coming to APD. Hired on an APD in February 92. Loved Alaska, didn't want to leave, and started out as a mid-shift patrol officer. That's where I first met the assemblyman here and worked with him. Worked up in Mountain View primarily, and eventually moved down to Fairview. Loved that type of work. Thought I would always be a mid-shift officer. Was happy doing that, and eventually promoted to sergeant. Stayed on mid-shift. Eventually I was recruited by the chief to go take over internal affairs as a sergeant. Again, I worked for Lieutenant Honeman at the time there. He was my lieutenant in internal affairs. Enjoyed that. It was a different experience, tough job, very hard job, but needed to be done. Left there, went back to mid-shift. Always rotated back to what I considered my home. And then went to command school at Northwestern with actually Chief Hebby down at Farmington now. Went there, I think, in '06. Came back and promoted lieutenant. As lieutenant, I took over the SROs. Loved that job, had it for a year, and then moved back to mid-shift. Took over mid-shift command and had that for a little over 3 years. Promoted to captain June. Took over crime suppression division, which is SWAT and EOD, SAU, SROs, training, hostage negotiators, all the specialty teams, basically K9. And then was fortunate enough to be appointed this month to deputy chief. Real honored, and I'm glad it's going before the assembly, but I consider it a true honor to be able to take over that position. So that's kind of my history. Love the department. Think we've got a great department, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So I think we got a great town. So never lost focus about who I work for.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say congratulations on your new appointment. And I want to thank you for your service. And I also want to say that I don't think this has to come before the assembly. We have to, it does?
Yeah.
Since when? It doesn't matter, because we confirmed department directors, but I didn't know that we confirmed deputies, but, you know. But anyway, thank you again.
Excuse me, if I may
Yes.
say something, I just wanted you to note how many times he said takeover. I took over this.
That's brutal.
I'm just saying.
That is brutal.
Noted, Ms. Trini?
I think it's just good to see in this position, Chief.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'll just add on by asking a question, Deputy Chief, would we be helping you or harming you by confirming your appointment at the assembly? Would you like us to confirm?
I would appreciate your support in the confirmation process.
Well, I just want to welcome you, and again, thank you for being willing to step up. We need leadership, and particularly in government at all levels, and particularly in our police agencies. As we all know, there have been challenges in our municipality, and not the least of which is surrounding police agencies. Is that Ms. Train?
Well, just, we need to have a resolution from here supporting him coming to the assembly. If we need one, I'll make the motion. I think I'll make a great deputy chief. If we get a second, let's just get that done. Elby?
Second.
Any opposed to the support? Okay. We will, we'll place a resolution of support from the Public Safety Committee to the Assembly as well.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, sir. Chief Fanning, with that then,
Yes.
are there issues of the police department, particularly with staffing? You've got an academy going on.
We do. Personnel, we got 16 recruits that are finishing the academy this week. They will graduate Monday at 1500 right here. So all of you are welcome, and I hope that you can make that graduation ceremony. We are planning on another academy May 19th, I think, is the target date for us. Right now we have 26 to 30 that I think have been through the entire process who are viable candidates, that we're taking a second look at all their packets and everything that'll be going before the lieutenants and the captains, I think, next week. So we're hoping anywhere from 26 to 30 for our May 19th academy. The 16 that graduates next week, we still probably won't have them on the street until fall. They go into, once they graduate, then they go, as you well know, they go into the FTO process where they'll go to each shift with a trainer and do a month on each shift, and then if they're successful, come back for their final checkoff. So it's really a 3.5 month process in the field training process before they get cut loose. But we're hoping that all 16 of them make it through the field training process. That would be unusual. We'll always lose 1 or 2 that are, sometimes more, that end up getting into the final process and think this is not what they really had signed on to do. We hope we get all 16 of them. We need those bodies, as you guys know. We are short-staffed, and so that'll be a big shot in the arm for us to get them on the street. And if we can get, like I said, even if we get 26 in the next academy, that will be a huge help. We'll still be short bodies, but that will help us. So that's kind of where we're at with the personnel stuff.
Mr. Trainee has a question.
There's a court suit going on right now, as you know, with APD. And
I do.
I've got an individual that's going down and attending every day for me, and reporting back to me. My question to you is, if we lose in that, is that amount going to come out of the general fund or out of your department's budget?
I don't know the answer to that. I have not sat down. This is my first week
I'm not
back,
saying
so
you're going to, I just want to know if.
I think it will come out of the general fund, but I can't.
Will you check for me and let me know?
I will.
Because if it comes out of your fund, then we're going to have to take steps to give you guys the money, because I don't want to come some aspect of law enforcement down because of it. You never know how a court suit's going to go, Chief.
That's true. I'll find out, sir.
If it's in general fund, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not positive on that.
Ms. Falk? Ms. Craig Jackson, do you have any comments? Budget for the first quarter, are you guys in pretty good shape? Or?
I think so, but I don't want to come prepared, but I have not been able to talk to the chief, and I'm not sure where we stand there. He's been in court all week, so I haven't had the chance to sit down and talk to him.
Last we heard that he seemed to have the vacancies from carryover that's
Yes.
budgeted for this year.
We still have some of those. I don't know.
Do you have
So
any
we got-
expected retirements like they did at the end of last year? Is there any?
We don't have any projected. I think we saw the bulk of them leave at the end of the year. So we're hoping it's just normal attrition now, but last year was, as you guys know, it was a hard hit. So we're hoping the worst of it is over and we can start actually adding bodies back with these academies.
We've had a couple of notable, high-profile incidents involving home invasions,
Yes.
particularly the south end of town.
Yes.
You may not be able to comment on ongoing investigation, but can you at least give us some peace of mind that there's some strategies, or there may be something that's?
There are, and I can tell you, I talked to the detective captain, Captain Booker, right before coming over here. We do not believe these are random acts, these two. We believe these were targeted acts. We are investigating them. I can't go into a lot of details without compromising the investigation. But we believe both of those, and we have suspect information at least that we're following up on right now, but we do not believe either one of them were random.
So, because I know I've had a couple of concerned constituent calls.
Yes.
Believe it or not, I've got an east side constituent who's in a assisted living home on the hillside that happened across the street from the first one. So
Wow.
she was very concerned about,
I understand that totally, but we don't believe it's random.
And then, in general, I talked with Ms. Domboski here last week. We were at a meeting in Eagle River. And there seems to be some growing frustration on the amount of property crimes and, for lack of better terms, what investment is being done across the board. Now, to be fair, it's not just APD, it could be with the courts, it could be with the judges, as we know, the district attorneys or the prosecutors. Is there strategies, or are you faced with challenges?
Well, we're faced with challenges, but again, I had her run the numbers right before I come over here. We're about where we were last year on theft investigation, so I don't think we're doing any less. We're down a little bit on fraud, but I think that's in the cycle. I think it's we've added one theft investigator back there, so I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's anything that we're not addressing. We have a strategy. That one particular incident that, we are investigating, that one that you had talked about, I think it's Lynn Dodson.
Yeah.
We are involved in that investigation. We're serving 3 different search warrants as we speak, or in the process of serving search warrants. So we are engaged in that, and we have suspect information in that as well.
Okay, that's all. All right, just making sure we do our diligence and convey back constituent concerns as they come through.
Yep.
Anything else on the APD side?
No.
Ms. Bree Jackson, anything?
Nothing,
Mr.
Mr.
Trainer?
Chairman.
Thanks, Chief, appreciate that. And at OEM, Mr. Fitch.
All right, well, we all know the big event's coming up on next week is the Alaska Shield 2014 exercise. We'll be kicking off. On the 27th, Thursday, will be the 50th anniversary of the 1964 earthquake. Most of the events that day will be commemorative events, and at 10:10, the church bells will be ringing, and then we'll have after that, I believe they have the Great Alaskan Shakeout. We'll also be doing that day. The Office of Emergency Management will be conducting an exercise on Friday, the 28th. That's when we'll be doing our operation, along with a lot of the departments, Solid Waste Services, AWU, Department of Health and Human Services, and so forth. Department of Health and Human Services has a special event also. They'll be working with all the hospitals to do an exercise. That'll be also on the 28th. They're going to be doing patient movements with the new, what do you call it?
Ambibus.
Ambibus. We'll be going around picking up patients and transporting them, so we're going to be testing out that. Let's see. Fire department will be working on, have the urban search and rescue teams will be working on the 27th, 28th, and 30th. Hazmat teams will be working on the 28th. So we have a lot of events going around throughout the city. We'll also, when we talked about this, about the 291st, we'll have a couple Humvees driving around. They're only going to be working on Saturday and Sunday, and limited to a couple areas. And no, they're not bringing any weapons.
Driving through neighborhoods
Just
or driving on main
driving
streets?
through the highway.
Okay.
Through the, it's not getting.
You have to understand, I have
Yes.
some constituents a little concerned.
All right. It'll be like seeing a Humvee drive down, just one truck driving around, so it's not gonna be anything. It's not gonna be like the Ukraine or anything.
That's right, we do have people that have weapons to take Humvees out.
So there we
So I
go.
want to tell them they don't need to get ready.
Right, don't go crazy. Okay, let's see. We'll be also having we'll be working out the Elmendorf Air Force Base will be for the full exercise. I'll be working from the 27th to the 4th out there conducting the White Cell will be doing the helping this state out and helping doing the rest of the state, putting injects out and answering questions with the state. Let's see, other than that, then we're still continuing our security vulnerable assessments. We're doing those, continuing those on. Now continue on throughout the rest of the year. It'll probably take until the end of the year to get all our buildings done. And then, let's see, we are doing community outreach. Michelle Torres has been doing a couple of health fairs, and one of her big jobs will be during the last Shield, of course, is she's been hitting a lot of press conferences. I don't know if you've been watching them on all the news stations, trying to make sure everyone's aware of self-preparedness. So we're still pushing that forward. And that's about all I have for you.
Mr. Trent?
We have a sheet of paper we can give to families that tells them if you've got this many people in your family, these are the items you need to have in your self-preparedness kit.
Yep.
In case you need to bug out for 3 days.
Yep, we've been pushing those for quite a bit. And again, all our kits and building kits, we always have, lower 48, they tend to say 3 to 5 days. We do 5 to 7 days due to we're kind of remote, so we do push those kits.
Is that information available through?
It's available
online?
at the office, online. It's also available on the Alaska Department of Veterans Affairs Homeland Security site. They have it also.
That's great, Jason.
No, just, thank you.
Thanks for keeping us up to date on that too. Ms. Meatfire, Health and Human Services.
Thank you. We also will be running an alternative care site as part of the Alaska Shield. So we've had a lot of nurse turnover, so the actual nurses in our disease prevention and control area, a lot of new nurses. Sometimes we question the use of nurses to be at the EOC when in an actual emergency you will want their skills where they're more needed. So this will be a valuable exercise. So we're going to try to keep our services up and running, our direct services, as well as participate as much as possible in this event. I didn't know what you all knew about the what you used to refer to as ADVP, Anchorage Domestic Violence and Prevention Program. That's a collaborative effort between APD and the Prosecutor's Office and Department of Health.
Has the title changed over the years?
Correct. Well, actually, it was a federal grant under that title, and so then the federal grant we're trying to close out at this time. That ended in December. Then we had a state grant that was that came to us late, because that's ultimately the goal. When you have federal funding for a program like this, then you would have to do, and it's successful, then it would go to the state. The state agreed, Commissioner Stewart did agree to fund it, not as much as we wanted. APD is still paying for their warrants officers, but so the state grant right now has to be expended by June 30th, but we got the money later, but we're working with, and you'll see this at the Assembly, Awake, Victims for Justice, I think, and STAR will be participating like Awake had in the past. STAR and Victims for Justice will be participating in helping people in domestic violence and sexual assault type situations. Now, with that being said, we have everything we need to have at the legislative level to get additional funding for this program. Even changing the name now to make it more marketable for the governor's passion, it is now called the Alaska Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Intervention Program, because it is Alaska. We get a lot of transients, so it is Alaska, not just Anchorage, and it is about domestic violence and sexual assault. So the problem is, I'll be working with Shalon, our liaison, and doing what I can do if I have to contact Wendy Chamberlain. I will be fighting to continue to get this funding, but that may not happen, and if that doesn't happen, this program doesn't continue, and this program saves lives. So that the funding would end in June 30th for this program. So that's a major concern on my plate, and I think that affects some of our other departments, as I said.
Mr. Trainee?
How much are you asking Juno for this year? How much money?
It's around between $500,000 and $600,000 is what we kind of settled on. I think we asked for 1.5 because we were looking to double our warrants officer, double our case managers, but we sort of settled with Struer because he had that big bucket of money that he had the privilege of handing out to various people, and so we just have to make sure that people believe that this program is effective, and we have a lot of data on it showing that it is. So we have given everybody, the major players, the information they need.
Are you in contact with Wendy down there in Juneau then?
Well, we were working through Shalon, and this was actually one of Brittany's assignments to work with her, because this is a program that falls under her, but I mean, that will fall to me now. So we are, like I said, we will continue to do that.
Would you let us know what the status is? Because we're probably gonna head down to Juneau first part of April.
Okay,
We'd like to check in with the legislature we need to get hold of.
okay. The other thing is, I have found a wonderful person to replace Brittany Matero's Public Health Initiatives and Partnerships Division Manager position, but I'm unable to say who that is at this time, but soon. So I'm very pleased, somebody from the community, very experienced, good relationships with the community, and so I'm excited about that. We're also losing Carrie Longoria. I don't know if you guys know, but she's over this CDBG and Home program. So she's retiring the end of April, and her position will be posted here soon. But we have our feelers out there, and we're hopeful for some good applicants.
Well,
Ms. Creed-Jace?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of things. Do you know when the Governor's Choose Respect March is this year?
I don't. I can find that out.
I was just curious, they used to invite me every year, because I was involved when I first started, but, you know, with, anyway.
Okay.
And then, so is this new person, who's taking over for Brittany, is she
We
also?
don't
gonna-
use the term takeover at Department of
Oh.
Health. Don't tell me.
She's in control.
She's
The
in New
person
Jersey,
is
she has
accepting
no
their
respect.
assignment.
Anyway, thank you. All seriousness, is the person who is gonna replace, okay, whatever word you wanna use, Brittany, is that person also gonna be the homeless coordinator?
Well, I
And
have
if you don't wanna
feeling-
answer, you don't have to.
her whole section needs to be tweaked, and I have a plan that I think will help. I mean, we obviously have a homeless problem in our city.
You think?
We don't have a homelessness coordinator PCN. That's the technicality.
I'm real well aware of it.
Yes.
Okay? We tried to bring it back.
Yes.
The mayor said that Brittany was gonna do it. So we're gonna bring it back again, try to bring it back again,
Well,
just a heads up.
I might have a plan, because, well, my concern is more that you have a division manager doing that job when that person also has other items on their plate. Although that person's span of control is much more limited compared to the other division manager, specifically so they can continue the relationships in the community and deal with the homelessness and ASP and sort of more vulnerable populations, CDBG, helping and home, and all those acronyms.
Right, and if I can follow, Mr.
Please.
Chairman, all that happened, okay, when there was a homeless coordinator who worked with all these other agencies, you know, and I think it's really important to have a specific position, you know, just focused on that, and it doesn't matter who that person reports to, but I think it's really important to have a specific position, for this purpose. It was, you know, it just made a difference, and I know that firsthand, that it did.
Well, personally, I think a lower level position would be more apt to do it, because it's a working, tangible person, not necessarily an executive level person. Like I said, I have some strategies I can talk to you about afterwards, but because I'm always considering cost savings as well, and yes, it's a need, but there's other things I'd like to do in that area, because we obviously are the homeless department. But you just shouldn't use the term homeless coordinator either. Maybe we could try to come up with something different.
Why shouldn't I use the term
That's just,
homeless coordinator?
I don't know, because maybe we could just come up with
All
something
right,
more creative.
I'll tell you what, okay, if I name is Chairman, we'll talk offline. How's that? Okay.
Because it's somebody who deals with vulnerable populations more than just homeless is what our focus is, and that's what I'd like this
We'll
position
talk.
to be
We'll
doing.
talk.
So thank you. By the way, you're gonna be getting, sorry, I'm actually going on.
Boy, you are.
The chief, I told him
That's
he always
unbelievable.
talks about it.
Yeah, I know.
But you should be aware that coming up on the agenda are also substantial amendments regarding home funds. Because we were delaying using those funds because of, first, it was, okay, we want to move Carlick Manor. Next, it was, we would like to do the Raspberry Court project. So that money was sort of held for those projects. Well, then we had to spend it. So that's coming on your plate. We're going to be scheduling a work session, so it'll be introduced on the 25th, but then we're scheduling a work session before the public hearing so that you are educated as to what is happening with those substantial amendments.
I'm glad to hear your, yeah.
Okay.
So, Ms. Wiedemeyer, just a couple quick follow-ups on mine, if there's nothing else. A fair statement that a majority of the HHS funding is federal or state grant funding.
68%.
68%. The feedback in the vulnerable population, but specifically those involving with homeless shelters such as Beans Cafe, and there's a few other programs that at the moment their acronyms escape me, but in any event, one of the criticisms that have been faced, and it's more political than it is, but I'm asking you the question because we can't do anything policy-wise unless we are finding the reality of what's going on from what you're seeing in the field as practitioners, is that the municipality itself, there's not a lot of, for lack of a better term, skin in the game. There's not a lot of municipal funding going towards, addressing the problems of when it's very cold or when there's the more vulnerable persons who are homeless are seeking shelter. And in fact, I know that Catholic Social Services through Beans Cafe and particularly the Rescue Mission and the Brother Francis Shelter, have had to do that 30-day out thing again, where they had to ease those restrictions. And their position on that is that they need more funding, and that the municipality hasn't really followed through with that. So in a form of a question, I guess I'd like to see where we're at as a municipality when we come to address this, as you say, vulnerable population and homeless situation. And to be fair, it's not just Anchorage. We do know that there are a lot of people that come from other areas of town or the state and end in Anchorage for a lot of purposes, some medical, some out of necessity to get more convenience or services that they don't have in the rural areas. But it's really hard to tell someone to define that this is the scope of our problem and we need X amount of funding or resources. But we really don't seem to have that. I mean, there's been some surveys, there's been some efforts made, but I think we're still lacking. There's some gaps there that we as policymakers can't really address adequately unless we know. So,
Well, first, if I may say,
Yes.
we're giving $1.7 million towards Anchorage Safety Patrol Center. And that's
That-
significant money. I know that's for a specific purpose.
Is that
but it's
municipal funds directly?
Taxpayer dollars are paying for a $1.7 million contract there.
Okay.
The other thing is, through CDBG and Home, we do significantly fund Catholic Social Services. You know, frankly, they're a large organization and they know how to put an application in.
Yep.
So we are funding them. We've given them some funding, like last winter, we gave it out of our own operating budget to see them through the long winter to be able to keep people longer. You know, but the strategy is, and which I would like to implement with my new division manager, and Brittany was working on this, is really you can't take it as the big, this big chunk. You have to look at those who are mentally disabled and try to work with the mental, community,
Mental health
mental
consumers.
health, that group. Not to be confused with the trust. And then, and then you have, maybe the younger crowd that maybe we've helped expunge some of that with our illegalization of spice, because that was having an effect on some of our centers. So we're looking at taking on pieces and parts of it, because really Catholic Social Services would also tell you, just like when you have a few, like the Myron Fannings of the world, one employee causes you a lot of effort, then, that's what happens with the centers. A few people cause them a lot of effort, whether that person's disabled, whether that person, can't physically take care of themselves. So we have to find ways to be creative with that crowd, and I think that will end up having a positive effect on the shelter so that they can just receive the normal single individual who tends to.
And to be fair, I know that it's not just a matter of if we had a bucket of money, do we just put it towards the problem? Strategies is obviously the appropriate way to do it, but are we funding adequately? Should we be? I heard you say, going back just a moment, just to kind of close on the theme of this, and that is, when you're talking about the domestic violence intervention, now sexual assault, federal grant is ending, as I understand you said, federal grant is ending. My question would be, have we applied for a new federal grant? Are there funds available?
There isn't one with the federal grant anymore, because the idea is you get the federal grant, then it goes to the state. Ultimately, they would say then it goes to local government. But this is more of an Alaskan problem, and that's the way we've approached it, and that's the way we've approached it with the governor.
I see. So it's those kind of, seamless handoff where we know that when that money stream ends, and we're facing this, of course, with the school district, which is a separate entity, but when those funding streams end, we've got to look at it as, do we continue those programs? Are they needed? And secondly, which I don't doubt that we can all agree that that's the case, but then what do we do? What's the solution to meet those challenges?
And I would tell you too that I went over to, Steve Morris and I went over to visit the Gospel Rescue Mission. They have an excellent run organization, excellent. The people that work there are people that came up through that treatment center and stayed there. What they have is discipline. You screw up, you don't get back in. So there's consequences in that shelter, and that's why they have the success they have. So, I guess we face a philosophy here of what people choose to do, in some cases. And we all know that there's some people that we know that there's people that chose to remain in Big Timber. As much as we tried to get them to go to a better place, they chose to remain there.
Well, it's no longer our problem as of today.
That's correct.
It's been bought by a private agency, private couple. They now own it. They paid the city back taxes, and it's not our issue now.
That's correct. But I just want to say, so people make their choices though too.
Sure.
So even if we have the shelters, we don't have somebody to watch every single homeless person out there.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much. Any other challenges on the forecast that you can see for
Oh, lots. We're
budgeting?
going out for grants. It's a very busy time of year. We're pulling our hair out, but that's okay. That's not your problem. That's my problem.
Well, let us know if there's anything we can do to help you with your problem.
Thank
Put it
you.
that way. We'll do our
Appreciate it.
best.
Thank you.
If nothing further, we do have, for two, if you'll, the committee will, take my indulgence here. Hummel's in the audience reference one subject, and the Ransoms are here reference an ongoing concern that they have reference transportation, so,
And I have a youth safety concern too,
okay,
about the city building that's unlocked and unsecured.
okay.
I don't want to bring that.
Ms. Hummel, if you wouldn't mind, since you were here last, to step to the end of the table there, if you would, and just, if you would just briefly address the committee on your concern, and I know that we've had some discussions, I know independently and sometimes collectively.
Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate the time. Just for the record, my name is Sandra Heffern.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, no worries about that, and thank you. I will apologize, I wasn't prepared necessarily to provide public testimony today, but I have been talking about this for quite some time, so I think I can speak off the top of my head. I've been working with some large assisted living homes that work with people with chronic and severe mental illness. One of the areas that they have concern about is Chapter 880 of the Municipal Code. Right now, they are considered as residential facility or residences, and so they have a cap of 8 calls per year for police emergency services before they start having fines for excessive police calls. If they were a commercial facility, they would have 100 calls per year. Again, these are facilities that are working with people with chronic and severe mental illness. They're placed there typically by the state of Alaska through either the Division of Behavioral Health or the Division of Senior and Disability Services, sometimes through the Department of Corrections. They are licensed facilities through assisted living home licensing, and they have criteria that states that if a person that they are serving is gone from the home for longer than a 24-hour period and they don't know where they are obligated to contact the police and let people know that these folks are gone. So they're kind of in a catch-22. On one hand, you know, they're trying very hard to provide a home, provide a secure place for people to stay, but then they get penalized, if you would, if they have a need for contacting the police. What they have asked is whether it's to have a different designation for these assisted living homes, you know, so that they're not a residence and not a commercial, and you know, they would be able to have an additional number of calls that they would be able to have over the course of a year before they become excessive or defined as excessive, or just simply classify them as commercial, you know, so then they would have those 100 calls. You know, if they have over the 8 calls per year, it's $500 a call, you know, and they can work with the police department to do a corrective action plan, which they have done. I worked with them to come up with, you know, kind of a screening tool with their consumers, you know, before the person even comes into the home, screen them, you know, so that you can see what kind of behaviors they're going to have, whether or not, you know, they're going to be a good fit with the other residents that are there. What we're finding is that they're screening them out, you know, so when you start talking about people being homeless or, you know, needing to go to the shelter, that's what's happening. And again, I mean, these are people who are, you know, discharged from jails, discharged from psychiatric facilities, and they're going to increase your homeless population, and you're going to deal with them. Our community is going to deal with them at some point, you know. So if we can have them staying in a home where they're getting some level of supervision, then I think that's a better idea than having them on the streets.
Mr. Trainick.
And what are they zoned?
You know, these are typically they are apartment buildings, you know, so quite honestly, I don't know. I don't know what
R1?
No,
whatever
they-
the zoning requirements are. I
they're,
apologize, I don't know.
Depending on the size of the businesses, and I can tell you, this is not the first time that this committee has addressed this particular issue, and that is We have homes with as few as a couple of patients, and then we've had large apartment complexes with 2 to a room, 3 to a room sometimes, depending on the size of the place, and they might have multiple persons in one unit, if it's a
We'll see if
three-bedroom.
we can address it maybe through zoning.
And so Ms. Heffern and I know have been having some ongoing conversations as to the scope of the issue and what would potentially be the remedy. And it had been my hope that it would be administratively, it would be a policy level decision, but they're using the interpretation of the law in a literal sense, and so Ms. Heffern, I don't know if you may have any.
Mr. Cheney, through the chair, I've talked with the city manager, and I've also talked with the police chief, and they don't feel that, under the Title 21, they didn't feel that they would be able to change the zoning for the assisted living homes. And as Mr. Honeman has stated, some of the homes are very small. I mean, it's like under assisted living home licensing, you can have a home that's 2 people all the way up to hundreds of people. The homes that I'm in particular talking about are licensed for 16.
And the more clients you have, the more opportunity that their people are going to, meet more calls for service. And so, if you were to look at it from an apartment unit, say it's a 10-plex apartment unit, the entire building doesn't get penalized, it's the individual apartment. But so if you've got 16 clients in one apartment building, and it just so happens that the same person has a wandering tendency, it keeps going back to that one unit. Well,
Exactly.
Ultimately, the department looks at it as, well, it's the same building, and so they keep going after the same problem. And it is a quandary. We get in this loop that's a challenge, to say the least. So I do know that we've had conversations with Ms. Tucker and Mr. Wheeler. I think recently Ms. Tucker has had some dialogue going on. Mr. Hall has had a conversation with us. Paul?
Paul, I think a piece of information that we need here, how many of these facilities are there, and are all of them having the same problem?
And I, anecdotally, I can tell you that there were a few that have among the higher risk population, so the ones with the more severe mental health issues or the ones that have the more problems with substances and whatnot. Because as you know, an assisted living home could take someone who's got dementia, Alzheimer's, and may also be physically infirm, who's in their 70s or 80s, not to say that there aren't people that are 70 or 80 that are pretty active, probably stronger than I am. But some of them are almost bedridden, whereas, and then there's less likelihood for them to wander. And then these particular ones that were being penalized, given the consequences, had a more younger population with more severe disabilities, and so their chances, their risk, if you will. And so it goes back to, what are your clientele and the business operation plan, and then so if they're accepting the worst of the worst, then there's a high likelihood that they'll be among the most higher users.
I just think that's some information we need in order to be able to decide how we deal with the problem. How
Ms.
many of
Heffern?
these units there are, who the clientele is.
So, Mr. Hall, excuse me, through the chair, I think that we also have to look at that the assisted living home community as a whole. In the state of Alaska, there's probably 400 to 500 homes that are licensed assisted living homes. Some of them are receiving funding through home and community-based waivered services, and they're people with developmental disabilities. They are receiving about $340 per day to provide services. Homes that are serving people who are seniors or have physical disabilities are getting about $150 per day per resident. The homes that we're talking about here, they're only getting general relief, and that's about $70 per day. Yet they're supposed to provide a comparable level of service. And so it's very difficult to say, that it's like, let's look at how many homes there are and what we're talking about without getting into some of that detail that, is part of Health and Human Services.
And I think these are all things to take into place. Do you have anything, Mr. Chair?
No, Mr. Chairman, but I just want to thank you for being here, and I have an email in my inbox that I've been saving until this happens, and now I can file it.
We will work. We will endeavor, and I know you've asked to meet with you, and I will set up a meet with you, and we can try to get into some more details, Mr. Hall. And I commit to the committee that we will have rather shortly some proposed solutions moving forward. And it looks, Camp Fanning, for lack of better explanation, until we may have to adjust 880 to accommodate this. So until we do, I would ask that, perhaps some policy discretion here on the enforcement side on a case-by-case basis would be likely the best start for now. At least that way we won't see, I would not ask, and I'm certainly not advocating that we treat people differently. I'm saying it's that case-by-case incident with the assisted living homes, because there are in a larger quantity. And I also ask, please, that the operators continue to do their very best to work
Absolutely.
on their action
Absolutely.
plans.
And I have met with Sergeant Ryan and Lieutenant Gillum.
Lieutenant Gillum. Okay.
So as far, I always find that in order to get something done, we need to know what the follow-up is. So what kind of follow-up do you need from me, with all due respect,
No,
Mr. Howland?
and I think our follow-up will be trying to delve into just enough detail to try to get further to, I'm gonna be candid with you, even though we pass and adopt laws, we usually get a lot of legal help to make sure that when it comes to laws that we're not saying, let's make it blue, and then turned out that I should have said light blue or medium blue, if you follow. I don't want unintended consequences on any law.
Understood.
So I think we need a little more data, and then we will approach our legal side and ask for some proposed amendments that might meet that. And I think I've heard enough that the administration is basically looking at what's in the law and how do they enforce it, how they interpret it, enforce it. So
Okay.
we're likely going to have to change law to accommodate.
Great. So if there's any information that I can provide, please feel free to get a hold of me. Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
You bet. And Jackie and Bob Ransom, I know you've been sitting patiently and you have calls.
Something that may help a great deal is Mr. Trini sharing what the plan is.
Oh, yes. Before you get started, Mr. Trading has had a brief meeting with, I believe, Mr. Musser.
Greg Musser, yeah.
And the
The
transportation.
two of us did,
Oh.
about an hour ago.
Really? Oh, great.
Yes, I did.
So if you want to just brief what.
Just that we need to make a change relative to the rates and take off on 1130 where it says maximum rates, take off the word maximum. I think that will put it back in the area of the Transportation Commission so we can get the rates going to where they should be.
Okay, but my concern is, it still states that the dispatches are the ones that set the rates, and nobody.
It's not supposed to, so.
Well, if it says it, whether it's supposed to or not, the title says it.
Can
And
you-
that's what
Ms.
the
Ransom, if you would just-
Transportation Commission says, we don't know what to do.
Okay, if you just briefly describe what the issue is so we can,
Okay, the dispatch, there's two
Oh, hang on.
dispatches in town, they set the rates.
hang on just 1 second. Ms. Green.
Okay, if I may,
Yes,
Mr.
please.
Chairman? Okay. The intent was that the Transportation Commission would set the rates, okay? And one part of the ordinance states that. The other part that doesn't, Mr. Trainey and I, we went from Muse's office to our attorney's office. She's gonna draft up an ordinance change just addressing that right now, because we don't wanna bring the whole thing back.
Sure.
Right now, just addressing that, and it's gonna be introduced on the addendum, Mr.
Great.
Chairman. It's gonna be introduced on the addendum.
On the 25th.
On
For the
Tuesday.
Assembly on the 8th of April.
To deal with that specific issue.
Should the ransoms or taxi? should
No,
they
it's
be the-
just for introduction. The
Just for
public hearing will
introduction.
be on the 5th, not the 15th, the 8th.
The 8th.
The 8th, right. But it's just to address that one.
So you
issue.
may-
Yeah, and
stand
that's,
by.
Mr. Chairman.
that's all, we were promised when they tripled and doubled our rates, but there was no, we were promised money would come in on the bottom level, and no money's coming in. And they added 15 more permits, which impacted our industry greatly. But most of those guys are single shifting, because nobody's gonna work for $2 an hour. I mean, and that, it's a real safety issue, because the people that are gonna work for $2 an hour, aren't probably the best people that you want to ride in a cab for, but it's all economics, and we're not a non-profit business, and there's no money coming in, and hasn't been for over 15 years. That's my concern. My other concern and I'm so glad that you guys talked with him, because at the last meeting, the Transportation Commission says, well, let's let the dust settle. We don't have any idea how to solve this. And we're going, wait a minute. You knew how to raise the rates immediately the next day once you guys passed it. but you can't raise our rates. And we need those to be a viable industry.
So it sounds like you should have people available, watch the law change that's proposed and be prepared to.
Oh, we're ready.
Thank you.
Yeah, I keep asking, that's what happens. My other concern is, I'm the contract worker for the industry for new chauffeur training, and I use the building permit, building for my training on Saturdays, 2 times a month. I've reported it to the transportation office because they're who I am under, last year and stuff. But I've noticed more and more, the doors to the building permit office are unlocked. And my students are waiting in the main lobby. They're supposed to go around to the side small training room, but the doors are unlocked. There is nobody in that building. It is so unsecure. The lights are on, and they get there before I get there. You know, they get there at 7:30 to be right there on class, and I have to go find them. Sometimes I'm set up in class, and they come wandering through the building to try to find me. And I've reported it several times. I called the ombudsman last Monday because, I mean, there's all those computers, there's all those files and offices, and
So the
they're-
building permit office, ma'am?
yeah,
Okay.
the main doors are completely open.
trying
You
to figure out
walk
which
in there
building.
every Saturday
Brick
morning.
building over there
The
at
4700?
4700.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, have you talked to the Public Works Director, Ron Townsend? Because I'm sure he probably has no idea about it.
I reported it to the TI, and then I called the ombudsman last Monday, because I keep thinking it's gonna get fixed. And then all my students were inside the main building at 5, and I go there and say, no, you guys, you gotta come around here. And I have a badge that I have to unlock the side door, but the main door is open and I'm sure it's just a programming matter, you know.
We will
What
discuss.
time was this that you were there? It was on
I go there
weekends?
at 8 o'clock, they're in there by 7:30.
On a Saturday?
Yep, Saturdays. And
8 a.m.
it just, all that equipment and all that, I just,
We will pass that information along. Also, I do know that the fire chief has some personnel in that building, so he might be very much concerned about
you
some of
know,
his equipment being.
they tell me to monitor, because I have that side door, and I watch, because there's some street and maintenance people that come to work on Saturday afternoons and stuff, and I've come to recognize who those people are, you know, they come through that side door, they have a badge and they come through. But that main door, I never see anybody in the main, where you go for permits and stuff, and it's just like, oh my goodness, you know, so I don't know.
Is that too much to impose to ask if you might just check and see if there's some?
I will say that Bob Moore, I don't know if you know Bob Moore from PM&E, he did, for some reason, he thought I knew, and I assumed it because he thought I knew everything about the city, and I did, because I directed him to Eric Musser regarding this issue. So I don't know if it's been taken care of, but somehow I just know that because I was contacted.
Oh,
So
see?
Bob Moore does work in the permit, so your issue got around to the right people, I believe.
Oh, okay, because, yeah, I kept having to find my students, or they'd come in through the back hall, and I'm going, where'd you come in from, you know, and, oh, yeah, just,
So I'll
Well,
follow
they're all
through.
under
I'll
Public
follow
Works.
yeah, so I don't know.
No, that's fine.
Okay,
So
but that,
Chairman, I'll follow through for the chief. I'll take more work off of the chief.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we haven't heard, because we are at 58 minutes? We are just a tad past the 1 o'clock hour, however, we started a little late. Mr. Hall.
Just an observation, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that in the future, when we have our meetings, that if the chief, the deputy chief, or department heads have other pressing business, that we excuse them and give them the opportunity to leave after their
Sure.
reports.
They
They're
usually
busy
don't.
people
They
and.
usually let us know. I mean, just to be candid on the record here as well, they usually let us know. In fact, you know, if somebody says, I've got a meeting, in fact, some of the committee members do the same thing. So
I just
that's a
wanted to
standing,
know,
I mean.
we take no offense if you need to go.
Sure, and I appreciate that. So with nothing else, we'll be going off record then. At time
Hey,
now
Paul, I got one thing here.
for the record.
Yeah, from the community councils.
Okay. Can you just identify yourself?
I'm Al Mosball with the University Area Community Council. Big concern we have over there, a couple of them, loose dogs on bike paths and aggressive dogs in dog parks and lack of enforcement from the animal control people. It's been a problem for a long time. It isn't only with our community council, other residents around town, the same problem.
Okay. Mr. Trini?
Have you gone to Animal Control Advisory Board to tell me your concerns?
I'm also I'm on the Animal Control Advisory Board. And
Okay,
that's
that's
been
what I'm
brought up by
asking the
residents.
question.
We brought it here before you guys. We need officers. In 2006, their survey was done, we have, said need 17 for Anchorage. We only have 6.5 officers. And they don't have enough, all they can do is react, the same as the police do, or we have lack of personnel. They can't be progressive, try to get in there and do this stuff.
And to make it clear, Mr. Millspaw, you're speaking on your own, not as a member.
Exactly, on my own.
As your commission, when's the last time they brought forward this recommendation on the need for more officers to the assembly?
Just prior to the submission to the city of the, for the budget. Now, I'm
just
speaking
thinking
on my
about
own now,
reservations coming up.
Okay.
as a citizen.
Ms. Wiedemeyer, if we could perhaps have that consideration as we've got first quarter budget revisions. I know you've got a lot of budget issues and you're pulling your hair out, but I know this has been an issue that has been addressed in past years.
I
And
know Deanne Fedco and I did talk about the need for more officers, and frankly, I just haven't gotten around to revisit that, so I
Okay.
will see where we are with that.
thank you. I know there's priorities and I realize there's only so many resources, but it would
Thank
be
you.
helpful. We're hearing these things from the community and I know they are as well, so.
And that wasn't from me, it wasn't for the Animal Control Board. I'm not speaking for them
I
now.
understand.
Okay, so time now then is 1:03 PM. We'll be going off record.